On April 6, 2024, engineers at the Kalpakkam nuclear complex on India's southeast coast passed a major technical milestone. A new prototype reactor reached first criticality, meaning it achieved a self-sustaining chain reaction. But this specific reactor is engineered to do something that sounds almost impossible. It produces more fuel than it burns. To understand why that matters, look at India's energy landscape. The country has a rapidly growing population, massive baseload electricity demands, and a commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2070. Nuclear power is a logical solution, but India holds only about 1 to 2% of the world's known uranium reserves, the primary fuel for conventional reactors. This chart highlights the dilemma. While this tiny sliver represents India's global uranium share, this massive block shows its share of thorium. India sits on roughly 25% of the world's known thorium reserves. Thorium is fertile, meaning it holds immense potential energy, but it is not naturally fissile. You cannot simply drop it into a standard reactor and start a chain reaction. Because of this extreme geographic imbalance, simply copying Western nuclear models was never going to work. Instead, the country had to engineer an entirely different, multi-generational pathway to finally harness the energy trapped inside all that thorium. That pathway was mapped out in the 1950s by physicist Dr. Homi Bhabha. He designed a sequential, three-stage nuclear program engineered specifically to bypass the country's uranium scarcity. The plan started with Stage 1, building conventional pressurized heavy water reactors. These are the reactors currently operating across the country today, and they run on that limited domestic supply of natural uranium. But there is a core limitation to this first stage. These reactors extract less than 1% of the potential energy inside the uranium. What they leave behind is a radioactive spent fuel that contains a highly valuable isotope, plutonium-239. To reach true energy independence, India couldn't afford to treat this spent fuel as waste. They needed to recycle it, separating out that plutonium to use as the primary ignition source for Stage 2. That brings us back to Kalpakkam and the 500-megawatt prototype fast breeder reactor, or PFBR. This single facility is the technological bridge making Stage 2 a reality. To see how it breeds fuel, we have to look at the physics. In a standard reactor, water is used to moderate, or deliberately slow down, the neutrons bouncing around the core. These slower particles are called thermal neutrons, and they sustain a steady chain reaction. But to breed new fuel, the PFBR needs them to stay fast. So engineers replace the water with liquid sodium. Liquid sodium does not slow the neutrons down, and it transfers heat incredibly efficiently. Mastering the volatile handling of this highly reactive liquid is exactly what allows those fast neutrons to operate a closed, self-sustaining fuel cycle. At the center of the PFBR is the core, which burns a mixed oxide, or MOX, fuel. This is made directly from the recycled plutonium recovered from the spent fuel of those Stage 1 reactors. This diagram shows the core layout. Notice the central MOX fuel zone. What makes this reactor unique is that this active core is surrounded by a blanket of non-fissile uranium-238. On a subatomic level, fast neutrons shoot out, striking the uranium-238 nuclei, transmuting the blanket into fresh, fissile plutonium-239. This is the definition of a breeder. By capturing those escaping fast neutrons, the reactor creates more fissile material in its blanket than it consumes in its core. This process effectively multiplies the energy potential of the original natural uranium by up to 100 times. By closing this fuel cycle, India has become only the second country on Earth, after Russia, to operate a commercial-scale fast breeder reactor, proving the viability of Stage 2. Achieving first criticality is a major milestone, but it simply means the reactor has reached a self-sustaining chain reaction. It is not pumping electricity into the grid just yet. Right now, the facility is undergoing strict phased testing. Operators are running low-power physics experiments to validate the core parameters, and they will only slowly start ramping up the thermal heat. After that come the final hurdles: secondary validation of the steam generation, and then spinning up the 500-megawatt turbines for grid synchronization. Full commercial operation is currently targeted for late 2026 or early 2027. Moving at this deliberate pace is a necessity. Scaling a first-of-its-kind liquid metal reactor requires unparalleled precision before it can be trusted as a reliable power source. A moment of wonder. But the most significant part of the PFBR is its long-term application. Look at the core layout diagram again. Eventually, that outer uranium blanket will be swapped out for a blanket made of thorium-232. When those same fast neutrons strike this new thorium blanket, they will transmute the thorium into an entirely new fissile fuel, uranium-233. That is stage 3. This freshly bred uranium-233 will become the primary fuel for a future fleet of advanced heavy water reactors, a fleet built entirely around India's massive thorium reserves. The breakthrough at the Kalpakkam reactor is the linchpin of a 70-year-old vision. By recycling the waste from its past, a nation is engineering a closed loop that will provide centuries of clean, self-reliant energy for its future.